Aj slovenský hudobný priemysel už má svoju prvú správu. Vyzerá asi takto. Vypracovali ju Daniel Antal, analytik a konzultant a je môjim hosťom dnes v štúdiu. Welcome. Budeme sa rozprávať po anglicky. Welcome, Daniel. A report on Slovak music industry has never been done before. Why did you decide to create such a report, and what's your expertise in the field?
The idea was not mine. Several countries did similar reports in the last 10 years. And in this region, there was no such report. So the Slovak, the Hungarian, and the Croatian music organizations together decided that they will create similar reports. So we created a similar report in Hungary, then in Slovakia, and with a little bit different focus in Croatia too.
Okay. What can you tell us about the size of the Slovak music industry, maybe in total, and then maybe compared to other countries like Hungary?
Well, it's a bit difficult to size it because first of all, the definition of the music business is not always very clear, because one part of it is live music and live performances, DJing, and the other part is composition and records. But in our estimate, that currently employs about 3,000 people.
In Slovakia?
In Slovakia. And we believe that this could be a much higher number. And the value added of this industry is of course, proportionate to this small number of employees, but proportionally it is very high.
What does it mean, employees? Are these full-time jobs that are created in this industry? Because I assume that there is much more than 3,000 people connected to the music industry in Slovakia.
Yes. So first of all, we translated the numbers into full-time equivalents, because in music, almost nobody has a full-time job. That's not a Slovak specialty. That's the case everywhere in Europe. So music is mainly a network of freelancers and micro-enterprises. So we calculated those people's work efforts together into a full-time equivalence, but this usually means most of the musicians in this country work part-time in music, and then they have some side job that is usually also music-related, but not as musicians. For example, they work in a club, or they are selling records, or they are preparing instruments.
What comes into the industry as a whole? You said it's live concerts, it's maybe creating music. What is the relevant size of each? What is the proportion of each in one big thing?
All over in Europe, and it's the same here in Slovakia. The biggest part is live music. After the internet piracy started about 20 years ago, the recording side shrank to very small side, almost negligible in economic terms. But that made the live music experience more and more important for the musicians to invest into their shows, and also for the audience. So the live music is now all over Europe, and in Slovakia is the biggest part. Compositions, so royalties received for authors, is the second biggest, which is mainly, but not only, represented by SOZA. And the recordings, which is the royalty payments that producers or performers get, is the smallest. It's maybe 10%.
So what should the musicians do, and how much money can they make in Slovakia? Do you have an estimate, like how much the richest or the best musicians make compared to just a regular group that's been played on radio?
Well, these numbers are confidential, and the way I worked, that I had access to the payments of 95% of the musicians, but not to the richest, because they are very easy to single out. And I think that it's not so important who is making the most money, because most of the people don't earn enough. I think that most of the musicians currently cannot make a full-time living from music. So we made two estimates: what would be a full-time equivalent, and how many people can at least get the minimum wage. And the whole report is mainly focused on how we can keep the people in this career track and increase their revenue so that they can make a living on it, and also create new jobs with their music. So these amounts are very small and somewhat smaller than in Austria and Hungary, but not so much. So this is also a regional problem. So most people don't earn not even the average wage, but probably not even the minimum wage.
Mm-hmm. How many songs are being produced in Slovakia per year, and how many of those songs can turn a profit?
It's difficult to say. It's difficult to say because not all the songs are reported to the collective management agencies. Some of the production is quite on an amateurish level. So altogether, I believe that we are talking about thousands of songs per year, but out of this, very few are successful. And that is also one of the tasks that made this report important to both for musicians who currently don't see this as a business, just as a passion, to make it more professional, and also to build these systems that make countable and representable the Slovak repertoire.
Is radio still crucial for musicians, or is it being replaced by streaming services, which are popular in Slovakia, and I guess they're popular everywhere?
I think that radio still is far the most important source of music, and the second is YouTube. And the other streaming services are not yet important in this region and not so important in Slovakia either. But we have to talk about two different audiences. So those people who are really keen on music and listen to a lot of music and discover music, they are more and more turning to streaming services. So from developing a career perspective or making a song success, I think it is an important medium. But the vast majority of listening hours, so if you count how many minutes people are listening to music in this country, radio will be the first, and YouTube will be the second, interestingly.
Mm-hmm. How much money are people willing to spend on recordings compared to maybe Western Europe? Not regionally, but let's say in this region compared to the people in Western Europe who are used to pay for music more, maybe?
Well, we have to talk about, I think, three groups of people. So there is a significant group of people who is not interested in music, unfortunately. And they probably only meet music if they enter into a shopping mall or hear radio. So for them, the answer is nothing. And this is the majority. And then there is about 30 or 40% of the people who have some interest for music and also for films. And they are willing to pay something. Now, this something is very little in this region in most of the cases, and there's only a very small number, a few percent of the total population who is willing to pay significantly for music. The in-between zone, they are paying indirectly, and this is one of the most important, probably the most important chapters of this report, that we're showing that in Europe and in Slovakia, people are copying music for free, which is under certain circumstances allowed. And one of the circumstances is that there is a compensation mechanism for musicians for that. And I think this is called home copying or private copying. This is for probably the biggest group of active listeners use this as their main source of music. And in a way they pay. I mean, in the blank media, in their smartphones, there is a little fee that the musicians get. So that's the middle group. So there is a very dedicated group of people who go to concerts, who are willing to subscribe to these streaming services. That's a very small group. Then there is in between where home copying and free sources are important, and maybe time to time, mostly as a gift, they buy something. And then there is a third group who just very passively meets music.
In previous years, it was very popular to buy somebody as a gift, let's say a CD. Is it still the same, or is it on a decline as well? And maybe people don't buy, let's say, access to revenue to streaming services like they used to, for example, CDs.
I do surveys of users in several countries every year. And I have to say that CDs and increasingly vinyl records are only bought as gifts. So it's still a gift because it sounds a little bit strange that I give you a copied disc, or I give you I paid 3 months of streaming services. So I think it's an ideal form of gift, But even increasingly, concert tickets are becoming gifts. So this is a way how music spreads. People don't really buy these products for themselves anymore.
Concerts we are coming into the concert season with large festivals. Can musicians who run around the country and make a couple of shows, maybe a night or a week, can they make their money in concerts, and how profitable is it for them, and how big is the concert industry in Slovakia?
Well, it's not big enough. This time in the summer we're coming to the festival season, and then we have the club season afterwards. Now with the club season, the problem is that a lot of small clubs went out of business, not only in Slovakia, in the whole region, which makes touring very difficult. This is a phenomenon globally, and in Europe it's called the small venue problem. That in the last 20 years there was not enough money in music, and there's a lot of technological change. Just like in this studio, a concert stage is similarly digitized, the equipment changed, and those venues that couldn't pay for this went out of business. Now that means that up to half of the small places are not in place, which makes organizing a tour very difficult. So you can probably make a successful concert in Bratislava or in Košice, but that's just 2 gigs. And I think to be a professional musician, you have to have about 20 concerts in a year to make a living.
In a year, 20 concerts in a
Yes.
even in Slovakia?
Everywhere. I think here even more. I can compare Slovak musics with Croatians and Hungarians and Austrians. And in these countries, because fewer people are paying for streaming services and fewer people are buying records, the reliance on concerts is even more. So in the less developed markets, concerting is a must. And it's difficult to organize tours, but there are ways to overcome this. You can try to find audience outside of Slovakia in bigger cities. And of course, the other solution in the region is festivals, where, okay, there is nobody to pay for the infrastructure of a venue for the whole year, but they are putting together this infrastructure for a couple of days. I think it is an expensive way to maintain cultural infrastructure, but very popular, because then you can concentrate a lot of listeners and a lot of purchasing power into one space. So that is why festivals are growing.
Do you have data on, like, let's say, the average concert or festival goer in Slovakia, and how many are there? Do they travel abroad, and how much do they pay a year to experience music live?
Unfortunately for that, I don't have Slovak data. We weren't able to measure that. I have similar data from other countries. All over the region it is very significant. It can be almost up to 50% of the concert spending. The reason for this is partly the fact that these small venues became unattractive, and the average concert ticket price is around 3 to 5 euros in Slovakia in small places. Well, and the average audience size is maybe 50 people show up, so that's hardly enough to bring the band there. And in festivals where all the infrastructure is present and there's a big crowd, people are spending music.
Do you have a favorite concert, or do you have a favorite festival that you go to?
I really much prefer club music. I have a lot of clubs that I like. But I try to visit many festivals, and I like the smaller ones. I think that the big festivals, I used to visit them 15 years ago. I went to all of them. But I think it's probably more for young people who can stay up much longer.
What was the most surprising or shocking discovery that you made while researching Slovak music industry?
Well, I wouldn't say I was surprised that much, but I'm running a survey every approximately 2 years among Slovak musicians. We're asking them how much they were concerting, how they earn their money, and they can always give feedback. And although it's a very tedious and long survey, they have to spend 20 minutes filling it out, about 1/3 of them usually gives feedback. In Slovak, of course, but my colleagues who I work with translate it for me. And it's always a very interesting mix of complaints and very harsh and apocalyptic words. Like the first one I read was the very first that came in. We started the survey. Okay, there is the first answer. The life of a musician in Slovakia is hell. And then a lot of positive comment. So even if it's very difficult to make a living here, I think people are not coming to music for getting rich, but because they are passionate about it, they enjoy doing it. And there's a lot of positivism in all kind of hardships. So that can always surprise me when somebody has like almost no income and a lot of problems, but in the end, I just get a very positive comment about anything, why he likes to do this, why he's happy that we asked him, or whatever.
Looking at trends in the music industry in the last maybe 5 or 10 years, what do you see in future for Slovak music industry? What do people who are involved need to change maybe to make it better for all involved?
Well, I could name a few things. First of all, I believe that the music industry in a wider creative industry setting should have a big growth path in the region and in Slovakia. I believe that in the last 20 years, this region was very much focused on manufacturing and catching up technologically. But that's not a feasible path because in the car manufacturing units, there are only robots working. So those jobs that have a high value added, they usually involve some high level of scientific or cultural activity. And we show in this study that on a proportional basis, the value added of Slovak music business at now is as big as the car manufacturing, and the taxes paid are proportionally even much higher. So I think that there's a lot of room to grow, and for Europe, which has a well-educated but aging population, this is a way to go. But the current Slovak economic policies and the current regional policies are very much industry-oriented. So the tax system is not really favoring creative activities and high value-added activities or high labor content-added activities. But music is very labor-intensive. A musician only needs the people to set up the show, a band. There's little capital involved, so it can create a lot of jobs if the conditions are right. So I see a lot of growth potential, but it also requires a change that is anyway, I think, important in this region.
Who should read the report on Slovak music industry, and where is it available, you know?
Well, it is available for free. Anybody can download it at the SOZA website. The SOZA is the Author Society, Slovak Author Society. And I think it should be read by anybody who's interested in economic policies or interested in the music business. Because I think that we are not only talking about music business, but we're also talking about how a more labor-intensive, value-creating economic policy could be pursued for all creative activities. The problems of Slovak musicians are very similar to filmmakers or probably even architects, all kind of creative professions. So I believe people who are interested in new policy ideas, from taxation to music distribution, they should find very interesting facts about it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for coming to our studio. It was Daniel Antal, konzultant a analytik, ktorý vyrobil prvú správu o stave slovenského hudobného priemyslu. Ďakujem pekne, thank you very much.
Thank you.
A s vami sa tešíme na ďalší rozhovor v televízii. Dovidenia.